This week we're going to be taking a look at a RichPen airbrush. This is the Apollo 113C, and I've been having a lot of fun painting with this airbrush. It's exceptionally well made, it's simple, and it sprays beautifully. And like always, you know the drill, this is no sort of promotion and it's not an advertisement. I purchased this airbrush with my own money. Because I purchased so many airbrushes, I'm always looking for deals. I found this one for $80 US. I bought it from Spray Gunner. That's an incredible price. And the thing that impressed me the most, especially at this price point, is the quality of the manufacturing. There is nothing cheap about this airbrush. Very nice finish. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So let's start with the objective stuff. This airbrush comes equipped with a 0.3 millimeter needle and nozzle. That's going to make this one perfect for general use spraying. You could do pretty much everything with it. It's going to be a little bit more forgiving for some of those thicker paints because it's not a tiny 0.2 millimeter needle and nozzle like you'll see in detail airbrushes. But also with a 0.3, if you reduce your paint, drop your PSI, you can get some excellent detail out of this. This model, the Apollo 113C, has a larger gravity-fed cup at 1/4 of an ounce or about 7 milliliters. And you can see inside the cup here that it's kind of that retro old school design, which I think is really awesome for a new airbrush. I will say though that this type of cup requires a little bit of extra effort to clean out just because there's so many sharp angles in there. But if you're using something like a water-based acrylic, as long as you flush it out with plenty of water, you're going to have no problem keeping this clean. The rear handle on this one is simple, clean. It doesn't have any of those extra features. This is something that I love. I love simple airbrushes like this. And the trigger itself is round. It has some knurling on the top, some notches cut out. And it does have a slight taper, a slight angle moving forward. It really feels like it locks your finger in there. Now for the finish, this is where this airbrush shines. This chrome coating is absolutely flawless. I own a ton of airbrushes, and honestly, this is as good as it gets. It's right up there with the other top brands. And I checked every single part of this airbrush, including all the internal parts. This is definitely a professional painting tool. There's no question about it. The only slight imperfection that I was able to find is right here inside the bottom of the paint cup. It looks like there's a very small piece of metal, like a burr in there from the machining process, just along the edge. And obviously that has zero effect on the airbrush's performance, just something I noticed, so I wanted to point it out. Besides that, the cup has a nice finish, and the needle and nozzle tip are also perfectly centered within the front of the airbrush. When you buy this airbrush, it comes in a simple plastic box with some foam padding around it. And unlike some other brands, you're not going to get many extra things with this airbrush. It's just the airbrush itself, which does come with a cap for the paint cup. And then you're also going to get one of these cheap stamped metal spanner wrenches to remove the nozzle if you need to. There is also an adapter here for a different type of air hose. If you need that, the option's there. A really nice surprise is that this airbrush comes with a spray test sheet. So this is going to be the spray pattern of your particular airbrush, meaning that it was checked before it was sent out from the factory. I honestly did not expect to see one of these for an airbrush that I paid $80 for, so very impressive. And also included is some documentation, a user's guide for your particular airbrush, and this is one of the better ones that I've seen from any brand. There's a lot of great information in this. To me, this instruction manual also fits in with the retro feel of the airbrush itself. It's printed on this off-white paper, really feels like it comes out of the 70s or 80s. I just thought this was so cool. And again, there's a lot of really great information in this, how to use the airbrush, how to clean and maintain it. And I know that it's just an instruction manual, but it's nice to see. So from here, let's move along to a breakdown so that you can see all the internal parts and how everything is machined. So first up, after removing the rear handle, I can unscrew the needle chucking nut, and then I can retract the needle right out of the back of the airbrush. Once that needle chucking nut is off, I can start unscrewing this part right here. RichPen calls this their spring screw. And this holds down the spring and the needle chucking guide. You can slightly unscrew this as well to make the trigger spring feel a little bit softer, but the spring inside here has an important job of making sure that the tip of the needle forms a seal with the nozzle itself, so I always keep this pretty much tightened down all the way. But that of course is a preference, it's up to you to set this how you'd like. And once this is removed, it's the standard 3 parts plus the chucking nut that you're going to see in most airbrushes like Iwata's. There are some major differences here that you will see from other brands like Iwata, like the Eclipse. And the first thing is this trigger design. It has that small bar at the bottom. This is similar to what you'd see in an airbrush like the Micron or the HPB. And the trigger lever itself is not connected to that chucking guide. It's a separate piece, so just be very careful not to lose this. And then finally for the nozzle itself, there's just one part here, the nozzle cap that I'm unscrewing. And inside here is the nozzle itself. I'm not going to remove that from the airbrush because there's no need to unless it's broken or you get a really bad clog in there. And so that's it for the breakdown. The airbrush itself is very simple, which is a nice thing. It's something I appreciate. But most importantly, everything is so nicely made and machined. Nothing felt cheap here. So let's move along to the most important part, the way this one sprays paint. I'm starting out here just spraying a few dots to show the trigger response rate. Now the trigger response is very good, but the paint initiation starts a little bit farther back than what I'm used to. It is very consistent, so it's easy to control, but you do have to pull a little bit farther back than you do on some other airbrushes like the Eclipse. And so when I'm writing out a few letters like this, starting and stopping the airbrush, the control is excellent. It's different from what I'm used to. It's definitely not my favorite, but it is a very accurate trigger response. All I could say is that I had a lot of fun painting with this airbrush. It definitely has a unique, a slightly different feel than what I'm accustomed to. Kind of like if you switch from a Badger airbrush to a Grex airbrush, it's just a different feel. They both spray great though. I was testing out some details, spraying some thin lines at a lower PSI with some over-reduced paint, around 12, 13 PSI here. And for detail, this one is excellent. And just a small test of the spray pattern here, you can see that this line is continuous. There's no sort of breaks. Very nice atomization of the paint. And if you're wondering, the paint that I'm using here is Schmincke Aero Colors. And so now for this black and white portrait, this grisaille, I was using my Creo 771 for the majority of it. And I was also using a Badger Sotar 2020, but I switched over to this airbrush to test it out, see how it performs compared to those two others. And it sprayed great, beautiful atomization of the paint, even at some lower PSIs. I just found this airbrush a lot of fun to paint with. It was doing exactly what I wanted. And it does have that cool kind of retro feel to it, which you don't see that often in modern airbrushes. And so I was just impressed with this airbrush at $80 US. That's an incredible price. I felt like it was a steal. I did get it on sale, but still, it's definitely an airbrush I'd recommend. If you can get it at that price, pick it up. I bet you're going to love it. So there you go. That's a quick review of this RichPen Apollo, a brand that I wanted to add into my airbrush collection for a while. Finally got to do it. And I do hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to the new channel members. I will be properly thanking you in next week's video. And I hope all of you just have a great week, great weekend. I'll see you back here next Friday.